Lots of questions coming into the newsroom from our viewers. Let's bring in today's town hall panel. Each of our guests today has been involved in the Tea Party movement. I think a lot of people want to know where it goes from here. Jamie Radke is president of the Richmond Tea Party and chairwoman of the Federation of Virginia Tea Party Patriots. David Webb is a co-founder of Tea Party 365. And Matt Kibbe is the president and CEO of FreedomWorks. Welcome to each of you. Matt, let's start with you. Here's a question from Ken Crow. Do they, meaning you Tea Party representatives, have a plan to organize all of the different factions of the Tea Parties into one major force? It seems there are hundreds, and if they organize, the voice of the Tea Party would be even stronger. What do you think?
Well, I like it in its decentralized form because you get a lot of power from the local leaders who have the best knowledge on how to organize their communities. I think it would be a mistake to organize all of the Tea Parties under one hierarchy. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't coordinate better, and I think there's going to be a lot of momentum working with these new legislators on shared goals that's going to bring some coordination.
Jamie or David, just chime in if you disagree with that.
Well, I do agree with Matt that we need to have coordination, and I think Jamie and I, who've worked together before, like the federation model where we're able to share ideas, stand up when the Tea Party's being attacked, and then also work on advancing policies. But what we have to be careful of are the politicians, the PACs, and what I call the power brokers and organizers who think it's in their best interest to just move us into another voting bloc.
He mentions being careful of the politicians. Jamie, let me ask you this. This question from Gary Markham. I'm interested in knowing how the Tea Party will help its newly elected candidates not be corrupted once they take their positions.
Well, you know, I think that that's really what makes the Tea Party movement different. I mean, in the past, people would wake up after Labor Day, after September, and decide to get involved in elections and look at their candidates. And one of the things that makes the Tea Party movement unique is that we are staying engaged in an ongoing basis. And we see that here in Virginia as well. People are constantly emailing, they're constantly calling their legislature, and we're going to be meeting with the new congressmen that are coming in as well as those that were reelected and letting them know what it is that we expect, what legislation we'd like to see put forward, and things that we would like to see repealed.
Ken in Washington asks this question. He says, Tea Party success was built on an organic event, the overreach of Democrats. To keep going, how do you deal with getting better candidates and turning out the vote?
Well, that goes to what the Tea Party needs to do, John. We need to have a proper vetting process when we support candidates. We have to be pragmatic and we have to be smart about it. We can't just go out and say throw the bums out, because we need to work with the institution. It's outside pressure that will solve a lot of the problems, helped by those on the inside who've been there, who will work with the American people, and that happens to be the Tea Party movement.
All right, stick with us. We have more questions coming up.
And we're going to get you in here, Jamie, in a second as well, because there's something came up when you guys were talking about what's the first thing that the Tea Party wants done in D.C. We're going to be asking that question, and Sherry wants to know, where's your money coming from now that the elections are over? So some tough questions coming up. Well, back now to our America's Asking Town Hall USA, and we're going to bring back our Tea Party panelists, asking them your questions. We have Richmond Tea Party President Jamie Radke, we have the Tea Party 365 co-founder David Webb, and FreedomWorks President Matt Kibbe. So, Jamie, let's go ahead and start with you. Diane had that great question about what's the very first thing you think the Tea Party-backed candidates should attack once they get to D.C.?
Well, you know, it's interesting, since President Obama loves metaphors about the driving. I mean, we simply threw a monkey wrench into the gears. We were in drive. We weren't in a ditch. We were in a drive going off a fiscal, cliff. And I think that the one thing that people want to see is they want to see Obamacare repealed. And they don't want to just see a curbed spending, but they want to see us detour off the spending path that we've been on.
So you think healthcare, is healthcare the number one issue, Jamie? For you, you mentioned that first. Is that the number one thing, the number one in the priority list?
I think that that is the number one thing that motivated the Tea Party movement, was to see Obamacare repealed, which was a multi-trillion-dollar event that is going to significantly save on our spending, which is the other issue that's very important to the Tea Party movement, which is the out-of-control spending in Washington.
David, do you agree with that? Number one priority is health care?
The number one priority is health care, but we have to be realistic. we're not going to be able to get it repealed. What we do need to do is deconstruct and defund parts of it. Until we have the three houses, we're not going to get this thing back. So while it's a nice slogan, that's not the practicality. I agree with Jamie wholeheartedly on the spending issue, because even the CBO said we have to do one of two things: raise taxes or cut spending. And the only way we're going to do that is to cut departments, divisions, and the only way to reduce the size of government is to actually reduce its actual size, and that is the bureaucracy.
You know, Matt, it's interesting just to hear this conversation about health care, because the #1 issue for voters in the exit polling was jobs. And that's a question we had a lot on the board for you Tea Party people, the Tea Party movement in general, Matt, is what is your plan? I mean, what is the plan that you're proposing to D.C. about how to create jobs?
Well, it ties directly into reining in federal spending and reining in the federal government, because if you look at what's going on in the economy, the persistent double-digit employment is being driven by too much spending, too much crowding out of private initiative. And Tea Partiers understand that today's deficit spending is tomorrow's taxes. And just yesterday, you saw the Fed essentially pull a TARP 2, but behind the veil of secrecy that they have. All of this easy money and spending that we don't have is crowding out the private economy. Job creators are sitting on the sidelines waiting to figure out what they should be doing.
You know, Matt, speaking of spending, we have a lot of questions about where the money for the Tea Party movement is coming from, Matt. And Sherry had that question. Where's the money coming from?
The money's coming from all over the place. The primary source of funding for the Tea Party comes from Tea Party activists themselves. They fund their local organizations. They fund national organizations like mine. But understand that the Tea Party is really not driven by money. There was a lot of talk about, you know, all these national ads and all of these PACs. The Tea Party is driven by the strength of individuals going door to door, engaging their neighbors, paying attention to what's going on in Washington, D.C., and that's what makes it so sustainable. It doesn't need a lot of money to function.
All right, we have a final question for all of you. I would like all of you to take a stab at this one. We have Michael Steele up next. He, of course, is chair of the RNC, and we would like to know, and several of our viewers would like to know as well. Michael was one of them. Gail wants to know, what is the message from the Tea Party to the Republican Party? David, starting with you.
Well, the message is that the Republican Party has to get back on course. It has failed for many years at the state and federal level to be the party of limited government, to be the party of fiscal responsibility. And frankly, it's about time the Republican Party gets back on course, or this American ship of state is going to go up on the rocks. You know, the bottom line for the Republicans, wake up. The people are demanding that you do the practical, and we have a bitter pill to swallow, and that's how we're going to fix the problems in this country.
Jamie?
Well, I think the message is really clear, and that is that the GOP is on probation, and they need to hear that message loud and clear. There's a reason why going into the elections this week that the Republican Party, as well as the approval level of the congressional Republicans, was below 50%, 41%, 28%, and yet they still took the House. It's because there's not a trust level with the Republican Party. So the GOP is on probation, and we want to see them perform.
And Matt, real quick, your thoughts?
Sure. The Tea Party defined this election both in terms of the issues that were ran on and the energy that came from the activists on the ground. This was not a Republican victory. This was a victory for the American people in those issues. And I'd like to see that humility coming from the Republicans as they do rehabilitate themselves.
You three set us up pretty good for some interesting conversation ahead. David, Jamie, and Matt, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to talking to you in the future, too, as we see how this election pans out and what's ahead. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jen.